just being normal, and like there's nothing wrong with you for being exhausted and not wanting to do the 8-hour grind. Just as the seasons, the days, the tides, and the moons move in a cyclical fashion, so does the female hormonal cycle. Can we start to reframe how we treat our cycles and our periods? Because it is amazing. Life is a miracle. This is a really great time to work from home if you can and just get ish done. Listen up, as today I'm going to talk about how I implement cyclical living into my day-to-day life that helps me feel more energized, be more productive than ever, work with my body and nature and everything around me. It's such a goodie. I live by this day to day, and when I first learned this, it literally changed my life. I'm so excited to share this with you. Let's dive in. Welcome to Resonance, a podcast for ambitious, heart-led humans craving more balance, depth, and aliveness in their lives. I'm your host, Vic, health coach, yoga teacher, facilitator, and fellow high achiever, learning to live in tune with my nervous system, not against it. And this space is here to remind you that you can have it all. The career, the success, the fulfillment, all aligned with your truth. Through honest conversations, expert insights, and practical tools, we'll explore how to work with your body, mind, emotions, and spirit, not against them. And the best part? You don't have to stay stuck in survival mode to get there. Because true well-being is not about being perfect. It's about being in resonance. Let's dive in. So to set up, I find it so cool that this episode is going to air during my birthday week. So if you didn't know, my birthday is this week. Obviously, I just said it. I am a fellow Scorpio. I'm a triple Scorpio. I have Pluto in Scorpio. For those of you who know astrology, yep, it's intense. I probably should do an episode on astrology as well. Anyway, that's a little random side note for me. And here we are. So I originally was gonna do like your typical cliche episode of like the things I learned and what learnings to share with you, because it's a big birthday. I'm celebrating a milestone birthday. This is my last episode in my 20s. So there we go. I know I'm an old soul, my friends. I'm a very old soul. So anyway, that's kind of the setup for this week. And as I was reflecting on it, I was like, you know what? There's actually no episode that I would rather do than this one, which is all about cyclical living and how I implement it, in my work life, in my personal life, and a bit of pre-frame, because you might be like, what, cyclical living? You might not be a woman. You're like, oh, this doesn't apply to me. Well, actually, let's debunk a lot of stuff before we kind of get into the nitty gritty. So first things first, like, we are nature, right? We can all agree with that. We are human beings. We are a species, just like a dog is a species, just like a bird is a species. We are also a species of nature. We come from nature. There's no arguing with that. And we are cyclical beings too. All things in nature are cyclical. We are nature, therefore we are also cyclical. And even though I will touch on the female cycle throughout this episode, just know that this also applies to those without a female physiology. So whether you don't identify as female, or whether you are a male, whether you don't have a cycle, maybe you've already hit peri or menopause, or you've had some surgeries going on, or etc. Like, this applies to you anyway. Okay, let's just kind of preface with this: what I'm sharing in today's episode applies with everyone. And as with everything that I share in this space, if it resonates, great. If not, let it go. There's no dogma here. I am not, you know, the one telling you that this is how it is. This is just my personal experience view of the world and the teachings and the wisdom that I have received that I'm now passing on to you. So you are a sovereign human being. You have choice and agency on what you do with this information. And look, what I'm about to share with you, if you're super, super new to this, it might feel like quite a lot. So I just wanted to preface this with the fact that there is no need for you to absorb, understand, let alone do it all. Okay. We will share some concepts and ideas and quite a lot of them today. And if you're like me, type A, perfectionist, OCD, behavior like tendencies, sometimes you want to dive in straight and execute it all the way to 100%. I've got a really great example of this where I bought this book. It's this beautiful book. I'll link it up in the show notes actually, because it's so incredible. It's on living Ayurveda, and it's got recipes and Ayurvedic teachings and yoga and rituals. It is so cool. I love it so much. And I remember when I first read it, I was like, oh my God, I need to do it all. Oh, I'm not good enough. Got all in my head. And then I was like, oh wait, hang on. It's let's just take what resonates, what doesn't. And you don't need to do it all. You don't need to do any of it. And also whatever you do choose to do, you don't need to do it right now, tomorrow, or in the next year. It's just whenever. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to preface that because I will be throwing a lot of ideas and things out there. So wanted to make sure we are on the same page. No need. Let's just take it easy, slow down. Even just being aware of this information and listening to this episode will already start to shift things for you. I guarantee you that. So let's start with just a really quick overview around cyclical living and cycles, right? So let's start with something that most of us can agree on. Hopefully all of us, but hey, you never know, is that on our planet Earth, we have 4 seasons. We have spring, which is the time that we're in New Zealand right now. It's lovely. Everything's perking up and just really active and coming out of the deep slumber of winter. It's wonderful. So we've got spring, of course, summer, right? Peak energy, peak heat, the longest days, kind of most energy, most socializing, mingling going on. We've got the autumn season, right? When leaves are starting to fall, everything's starting to turn inward. And then we've got winter, which is kind of that the days are the longest, it's the coldest, kind of everything's sleeping almost in a way. So you can probably already start to sense that I'm planting some seeds, pun slightly intended, on the cyclical nature and the energies that surround that cyclical nature. So hopefully we all, or most of us, agree on seasons. So let's move into the day and the sun. As each and every day as we wake up, we've got the sunrise. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I don't know about you, but my entire life, every single day that I've woken up, the sun has risen. It will continue to rise. It's pretty great constant to be able to rely on in life. Then we've got midday, which is when it's at its brightest, right? The highest peak. My Kiwis in the house know that that's definitely when you want to stay out of the sun, get your sunblock on, get into the umbrellas, because our sun here is ruthless. It's actually not the sun, it's the ozone layer. But anyway, if you want to nerd out on that, you can go on your own Google adventures. And then we've got the sun setting, right? So it's going down, and then we've got the night. Okay, cool. So we've got the seasons, the day. Let's talk about tides, right? Those of us who live by the ocean will be quite familiar with high tide, which is when the water is kind of at its highest point, right? That's generally for those of us, say in New Zealand, when we'd be going out for a swim, or try and get the boat out into the water. I don't know. I don't own a boat. I've never tried to get a boat onto the water, but I assume that's when you go. Then you've got the tide ebbing away from the shore, right? It's kind of moving out. You've got low tide, which is when it's like so far away and you've got all this like miles and miles of sand. It's always a fun time to like play at the beach, but probably not the greatest time to go for a swim, although it might be a great time to just like potter around if you say like you've got a little kid or a dog and you know that they're not going to be swept away by too much water. And then the tide makes its way back to the shore, right? Ebbing towards the shore. Starting to see a pattern here, right? And let's talk about the moon. And this might be when some of you start to be like, what? But hey, we can all see it, right? There is a waxing moon phase, which is actually the phase that we are in right now at the recording of this episode, where the moon is getting brighter. We've got the full moon phase where it is at its brightest. It is kind of the whole round circle that you can see up in the sky. You've then got the waning moon, which is when it's at, it's getting darker. It's kind of falling over to the, to the side. I guess that's kind of what it looks like. And then you've got the new or the dark moon, which is when you actually cannot see it. It's still there. It is just fully hidden by relative to its position to the sun and the earth. And I'm prefacing all this because this is the magic of the female body. Is just as the seasons, the days, the tides, and the moons move in a cyclical fashion, so does the female hormonal cycle. And you may have heard the previous last week's episode, if you listened to that with Taylor, and I speak about that. I highly recommend if you haven't yet. It was such a great conversation and really dives into working with your cycle and physical health and skin health and mental health and all the things. Like Taylor was a big catalyst for me learning and diving into this work. And this is what inspired today's episode. It's like, actually, like we need to elaborate because there's so much more to share here. So as you would have heard, if you listened to last week's episode, if not, I'll do a super quick kind of reiteration. The female cycle really mirrors the cycles of nature. So our cycle starts when we menstruate, and that is day one of our cycle. It is corresponding to the winter, the dark moon, the low tide, the nighttime energies of all these other things that we spoke about. We then come into our follicular phase. So that would be kind of like our springtime, our sunrise, our tide ebbing towards the shore, waxing moon kind of energy. And then we reach ovulation. So ovulation is when we are at our most fertile. It is actually around this time is the only time in your cycle where you can actually get pregnant. You are really energetic. I mean, just like your skin is glowing. You are literally more attractive because of the pheromones that you emit. And that time of your cycle is related to the summertime, kind of midday, high tide, full moon energy. And then we come back around into the luteal phase, which is your autumn, your kind of sunset, tide ebbing away from the shore, waning moon energy. And so hopefully you can start to see these little connection points. And so what I'm going to do now is share with you how I apply this knowledge and wisdom in my life, both at work and in my personal life, to really finally start to work with my body, not against it. Okay, so let's start with spring. Even though it's not the start of our cycle, it's like we're in spring right now. It just feels really relevant. We're going to start with spring follicular energy. And by the way, I kind of also want to preface again, like, which is why this episode applies to everyone. Like, even if you are not a cycling female, you can follow the moon. Like, the moon's gravity pull influences the tides. And we are 90%, well, not 90, I guess it's up to 70% as we age, water. So if the moon is strong enough to influence the tides of the ocean, which is water, don't we think that it kind of like influences things within us as well? And that's not to say that like your cycle would be the same on the same day as the moon. Like that happens sometimes, but and we could dive deeper into like the meanings of that if you're interested. But no, it just happens when it happens. And if you are a cycling female and your cycle is pretty predictable and regular, I suggest you go with that as your guidance. If you're not a cycling female, so men in the house, people who don't have a female reproductive system, people who are in menopause or perimenopause, follow the moon. Just go on timeanddate.com. I will link it up for you. It is right there. It is super predictable. And in fact, that's how I started, because when I began working with this information, my cycle was still healing from like 12 years of being on the hormonal birth control pill. And so it took me some time for my cycle to become regular and predictable. So in that time, I actually used the moon a little bit more to guide my energy and where I put my focus. So let's dive in with spring, your follicular energy. It is rising, right? Think of like the seeds sprouting, the flowers blooming. So at work, that time in your cycle or in the month of the moon cycle is a really great time to brainstorm new ideas, build timelines on a project, maybe start a new project that you've been like, thinking about, but didn't feel quite confident or ready to start yet. It is a really great time to initiate and plan. So, personally, I really follow that. I find that it is so wild how much more future oriented and like planned and like crystal clear I am on what needs to get done, like creating a task board or a project outline or whatever I am in that time of the cycle. It's so cool. And then from a life perspective, which is going to be quite holistic, I'm just going to throw some little bits and pieces out there to keep this episode in harmony with kind of your work and life dynamics. So in life, it's a really great time to refresh and renew, right? Like think planting a new seed. Think trying something new, whether you've wanted to try a new movement routine or a new dish, or you've been wanting to go and try this new restaurant. It's a great time for newness. Also just on a physical health perspective for females, this time of your cycle, like just after your period, this follicular time is a great time to do a breast cancer check. So I'll probably find a resource as well on that and link that up in the show notes for you. And if you are someone who is new or not so new into fasting, whether you do intermittent fasting or kind of bigger detox-like practices, this is the time to do it. This is when your hormone levels are at their most prime for you to put the body under a little bit more stress, which is what fasting effectively is. And I will share Dr. Mindy Peltz's book, Fast Like a Girl, in the show notes. I read that book in 2 days. I've never read a book that quickly. I loved it. I soaked it all up like a sponge. And I've now since been following her kind of female fasting protocol. And I feel incredible. I really highly recommend it. So that's something perhaps new to play with at that time of your month. And then we move into the summer ovulation energy. So think of this as the energy is at its peak. So from a work perspective, it's a really great time to connect, be visible. If you have the agency and ability to own your schedule and plan things out in advance, like if they're not pre-planned for you by your workplace, it is a great time to proactively book speaking engagements. If you're an entrepreneur, it's a really great time to batch content. Like you will most likely at this time in your cycle be at your most fertile of course, but also most productive, like fertile from a creative perspective, where it feels like you get like 3 days of work done in one. It is wild. Use it to your advantage. It is a great time to schedule important meetings, pitches, whatever it is that like requires more of you. This is the time of your month where you will be the most primed to do that. And in your life, you'll be more sociable and communicative. So, especially my introverts in the house, hello, I am an introvert through and through. This time of your cycle is a great time to plan to hang out with your friends. It is a great time to have a hot date with your partner. You will feel a little bit more frisky as well, because again, the hormones are pumping. So it's like, hey, enjoy that energy. From a physical health perspective, like your strength or cardio training will feel effortless. So it's a really great time to take advantage of that increase in energy. There was a period of time where I could like really tell when I was ovulating because I was like practicing my handstands at that time. And that was just like, wow, my body just like wants to challenge and move itself. It's really cool. And also from like another little hack that I tend to use is this time in your cycle is a great time to batch prep meals ahead of time for your luteal phase. So you could like, maybe that week you feel really energized and you like cook something new every day. And I tend to like cook quite a lot. So then I'll have lots of leftovers that I can put in the freezer that I can then use at later, more autumn like phases of my cycle, which is the energy that we're going to talk about next. So autumn, your luteal phase, the energy is starting to wane. It's starting to decline a little bit. And your luteal phase is also the longest phase in your cycle because it is when we are focused, can get things done, we tick the boxes, we finish the things. So at work, that time of your month is a really great time to dot the I's, cross the T's, wrap things up, start to complete, get things done. It's a really good time to do like focused individual work. So things like, putting yourself on do not disturb or working from home or closing the office door, if those are things that are available to you. And it's also a time where you're probably less likely to be keen on meetings. So if like, even if you don't have agency over the schedule, right? Like, let's be real, if we're employed in a corporate environment, chances are that a lot of the meetings are mandated or dictated by others. You might be like, oh my God, I really don't want to be here. That's quite normal, actually. Just know that it's normal. There's nothing wrong with you. It is just your hormones are literally not at that stage of wanting to interact with people. And you may be more direct and irritable. So know that as well. And in your personal life, like on that note, yes, you are going to feel more irritable, probably more tired and hungry. You might feel like you need more energy, more sleep, more fuel, and that's so normal because the thing is, like when you're in your luteal phase, what's happening after ovulation, so after the egg is being released into into your reproductive system, you're in your luteal phase, you are literally building uterine lining, you're creating a safe haven, a like warm nook in your womb for a potential baby, because that's what your body is thinking. It's like, okay, cool, I released the egg and the egg is going to get fertilized. So now we need to put all our energy into creating, like getting ready to house the baby, so to speak. Even if you are not pregnant, even if you didn't, like, even if the egg didn't get fertilized, right? So that is why you're using up so much of your energy. And then you also might not want to be around people, especially later on in the luteal phase, because at that time when like your body is, think of it like as nesting, right? You are hypersensitive to people who, like your nervous system. This isn't just you, like your hormones in your nervous system are hypersensitive to people who would be safe people to have around to raise your baby with. Like, even if you never have children, if you don't want to have children, all that stuff, like that's what's going on in your body physiologically. So there might be certain people that you just don't want to be around. Like, this is a really great time to work from home if you can and just get ish done. Give yourself grace and allow rest in this phase, in this phase of your cycle. And a really good thing to do that I've been implementing lately is to make note of what irritates you, but just don't act on it yet, because you never want to act from that space. You want to make note of what's bringing it up. And then in your next phase, your winter menstrual energy phase, that's actually when a lot of the wisdom will come through. So in this winter menstrual energy new moon phase, your energy is at its lowest. So at work, this is when we're at our most intuitive. Think if you've got some big decisions to make, if you need to do some reflecting or research, like that is a really good time to do that. But other than that, like, honestly, you're gonna be at your lowest energy in this time of your month. It surprises me every single cycle, like, because it's just so wild. Like, you go through these 4 cycles and you're like in spring, and then you're in the ovulation, you're like, oh my God, I feel so amazing. And then it's like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit more chill and everyone's kind of annoying me. And then boom. And it's just like, you get hit by a ton of bricks. At least that's my personal experience. And it just like literally surprises me so much every time. And I know this now. And I hope that, if this is new to you, this will also now give you a little bit of like permission or sensation of like just being normal, and like there's nothing wrong with you for being exhausted and not wanting to do the 8-hour grind that unfortunately our male dominated productivity system is based on, the male 24-hour testosterone cycle that refreshes every single day. Your body, if you are a cycling female, is not built for that. You will likely need extra rest, and you will likely not feel as quote unquote productive at work. That is completely normal. Like, please don't beat yourself up about that, because the thing is, like, at the end of the day and in the month, like, you still get the same amount of work done, right? It's just like when you were in your ovulation phase, which is the phase that like most of us celebrate, you got like 20 times as much done as you normally would. And then like these things just need to balance out, which is what this phase is. And your body, because if you're menstruating, you're not pregnant, and that uterine lining that we were speaking about just before, that you were building in your luteal phase, it is now being shedded, right? It's got to come out so that you can kind of refresh and renew, and the body does its thing all over again. Your body is literally using most of its energy to shed that uterine lining. It takes a lot out of you. And I really hope that like workplaces soon will start to understand and accommodate that half of the workforce is dealing with this every single month, let alone things like, perimenopause and menopause, which I can't speak to directly, but I've definitely had many friends and acquaintances kind of share about that. So yeah, because you can tell I'm quite passionate about it. So just for you, with giving you agency over your choices, just take it easy, and know that it's totally normal and it's okay. And in life, as I mentioned earlier, you will be quite intuitive. So if you've got some challenging questions or decisions to make, or perhaps those things that we spoke about earlier that irritated you in your luteal phase, like now this is a really good time to sit and kind of and be with those questions and let the answers kind of intuitively come to you. So some of my teachers talk about, rather than, oh, I'm going to go think on it, it's like, I'm going to go bleed on it. And I think that is just such an incredible and powerful way to own that female nature. It's also a really great time to reflect on what you're ready to leave behind and kind of what you're ready to let go of, whether it's like limiting beliefs or habits that don't serve you. Maybe it's people in your life or whatever else. And think about what you want to call in for this new cycle that's coming up and kind of set intentions ahead. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Rest, rest, rest. Take that nap, go to bed early, sleep in if you can, take a bath, whatever. Like you're at your lowest energy. Please don't expect yourself to operate at the same level of efficiency, productivity, and like when you're menstruating as you do when you're ovulating. It is just not possible. It is not sustainable. So, I just thought I'd give you just like a super brief overview of like, well, practically, like what does that look like for me applied in real life? And to put it really simply, like I know that I have more capacity and bandwidth in my schedule when I'm in my spring and summer energy. And so I'll make use of that and try and batch things like right now, recording this podcast. Like I saw some friends last night. I'll schedule interviews, which I did this morning. I've got another catch up. So like really making use of that high energy time. Might do like stronger workouts or batch prep meals. And have like events or outgoing scheduled at that time. And then when I go into my autumn, my luteal phase, I start to tune inward. I tend to put more detail-oriented tasks on my to-do list. So things like loading my expenses. I was originally thinking about doing it this week and I was like, no, like let's do it when I'm most prime for it. And so that's going to be next week. I also know that I am going to be more irritable. And so I'm going to be doing my best to stay mindful of this and protect my energy, and maybe if I need to, amplify the practices that help me process whatever is coming up and steering things up in the moment. And then in my winter kind of menstrual energy, first of all, like day one of my cycle, I always celebrate. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you again. I get to go through this cycle. It's telling me my body is healthy. It is working exactly as it's supposed to. Like, can we start to reframe how we treat our cycles and our periods? Because it is amazing. Life is a miracle. If you are a cycling female, your body was literally designed to be a portal for new life to pass through you. It is so cool. And so like, I'm just like stoked with myself. Like my partner jokes sometimes that it's like, I'm like a little teenage girl. I'm like, yeah, like this is awesome. And then I know that like day 2 and 3 of my cycle, I'm just flat out rest. Like if I can, and I do this in my business, is like I block out my calendar on the days that I am predicted to be in this phase so that I don't have any interviews or meetings booked, or at least like as little as I can, right? Because again, the level of agency that we have over our schedule will depend on where you're at in your life and business. And yeah, just celebrating start of a new cycle. I always find that quite cool. So with that in mind, hopefully this has given you quite a bit to think about. And again, I'm just going to go back to what I said at the start, is that like, you don't need to do it all. You don't need to understand it all. You don't need to wrap your head around it all. This is just planting some seeds. And even if you just start to bring awareness, like, oh, okay, like this exists, like this makes sense. And I learned a lot of this from my financial coach and mentor, Kate Northrup, who also wrote a book called Do Less, which I will link up in the show notes. I love it so much. She also facilitates a program that I've spoken about on this podcast before. It's called Heal the Way You Work. And she really weaves that cyclical nature in and like takes what you've heard in this episode and like 10x's it and gives you really great practical tools and handouts and advice to implement it into your life. Like I use that, and a lot of what you've shared is either learned from her or kind of adapted through my life applications and lived experience as I've now been living and breathing this work for over a year. So to tie things up in a pretty little bow, I would encourage you as your next action step, if you are a cycling female, just start by paying attention to your cycle. if you're not already doing that. And just start to notice how you feel at each different stage. Maybe you feel inspired to experiment with one of the ideas that I shared today, or maybe you just let that percolate for a little bit and just, yeah, really let the information simmer. Like both, all of that is perfect. And if you are not cycling or you do not have a female physiology, just notice whether you can see these same patterns for you during like the yearly seasons, or if you are open to it, the phases of the moon that we've spoken about, because yeah, you can so totally use the moon to help you do the exact same thing in your month. As I mentioned earlier, like that's literally what I did when I first heard of this work. So I'm hoping that you found something new, something different, found value in the episode that I've shared today. And I kid you not, ever since I've started to actually honor, respect, and acknowledge my body and where it is in its cycle, I have been feeling so much more energized, so much more connected and in tune with myself, because I'm finally working with my body, not against it. So give it a try, have some fun. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, have a beautiful week ahead. Bye for now. If you're enjoying this episode and want to stay connected beyond the podcast, I would love to invite you to join my newsletter. It is a soft little pause in your inbox, an email that you actually want to read, sharing reflections, wellness wisdom, and seasonal insights to really help you slow down and come back to yourself. You'll also be the first one to hear about new offerings, events, upcoming episodes of Resonance, and so much more. The links are right below this in the show notes. You can sign up through my website, liveandhealth.co, or by heading to any of my socials at liveandhealth. The links are in my bio. It is free, it is gentle, and always created with care. The views and opinions expressed by guests on Resonance are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of me, Viktoria Levenberg, Live in Health, or anyone working within the Live in Health brand. This space welcomes a diversity of ideas, experiences, and stories, and part of Resonance is learning to take what aligns and gently leaving the rest. Also, while I am a national board-certified health and wellness coach and deeply passionate about well-being, this podcast is intended for educational and inspirational purposes only. Resonance does not substitute personalized medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. Always seek guidance from qualified professionals for any physical, emotional, or mental health concerns.